we're speaking with, where do we begin? With author, well, musician, designer. What else? You multi-hyphenate son of a gun.
Oh,
Is there anything I left out?
father.
Father?
I'm
No?
a meditation teacher now.
Oh, wow.
Um, that'll do, I think. Yeah, that'll do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm everything but a filmmaker.
Well,
So
there's still
I'm a little
time.
self-conscious.
I start. Right. Yeah, and you're on a film show, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the book we come to talk about. We're here with Jim Infantino, author of The Wakeful Wanderer's Guide to New England and Beyond. New England, excuse me. Let me rephrase. The Wakeful Wanderer's Guide to New England and Beyond. I'm calling you. You're in Revere side? No, where are you? You're in
I'm in Boston.
Boston. I know
Yeah,
you're in
Boston proper.
Proper. It's
Yeah,
wicked awesome, by the way.
it
And
is.
then I am calling you from the Rhines.
The Rhines. I love that
North
as a
of the
name
Rhines,
for
actually.
the
I know.
Rhines.
Well, I make, for those listening who haven't read the book, and shame on you for that. It's a good way to
Yeah, start by shaming. It's good.
Shaming your listeners. It's a science fiction novel, but it's what I really love about it. One of the things I love about it, this world you created, is the names of what we will refer to places in the future, that we currently live in. So a few examples would be one of the main places, like your hero comes from, is Revereside.
Oh, Riverside.
Riverside, excuse me. I'm going to botch things up.
Well, I don't have pronunciation,
Good.
tables in there. Just
Don't
whatever.
You don't need to treat your readers like children.
True.
Me, on the other hand, you may need. I require a little handholding. But no, I mean, there are a lot of things that went over my head. Well, a couple of things, but because it's a really, it's deep book. It's deep. I think a second reading is in order. So if you could just hold on.
I will wait here. Thank you. And I'll just give you a running commentary while you, yep, that is the prologue or the forward.
It was the preface. Actually, it's the preface.
There's a preface.
There's a preface, which you wrote, but
I've forgotten everything. I don't know.
There is a forward by Scott K. Andrews.
Yes,
for science fiction fans will know that name.
He's great. He's a great author. I read his series called Time Bomb, which is fantastic. Most exhaustive time travel series of novels that I've ever read. Just in terms of how much he kept track of what had happened in the past that was changed by what was going to happen in the future. It's crazy.
Yeah. Is it as hard for the reader, or is it kind of, do you get the hang of it after a little while?
It isn't. No, it isn't confounding. As a matter of fact, it's very accessible. It's just that you realize, of course, as you get further into the book, that a lot of the things that, how does it work? A lot of things that are happened earlier because of the whole time travel thing, and they get increasingly locked into a future because of future choices that they made. Then it ended up in the past. I never would have. I don't know how he did that.
Well, I mean, he may have the same reaction to your book. I mean, I did. I'm like, how did you do this? How did you create such an incredibly intricate world that, because so much of it is consistency and making sure everything makes sense, and but I want to finish what I already had brought up before we move on, which is these towns that Riverside, for instance, which sounds like Riverside.
Right.
Maybe that was bastardized over time.
I was trying to get in the idea of dreaming into what is now Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow, New York. Near you.
Not terribly far.
No, not here. Oh.
Not that close. I think I'm like that's Westchester.
Right. You're so Hudson Valley now?
Yeah, I'm pretty far up. I mean, I'd say halfway between there and Albany, something like that. I don't know. You know where Kingston and Woodstock are?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm right across the river from there.
Okay.
I'm on the east side of the river, the New York City side.
Got
So
it.
Albany Post Road, which you can take Route 9 right from the city, as you know,
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
own knowledge and research, and you can take that up straight up to Albany, obviously. But one road all the way.
It's an escape route. As I remember, there are these escape routes from New York City that people know.
Oh yeah.
When it gets too much.
When doesn't it?
Yeah,
But certainly now more than ever. But
indeed.
anyway, but your hero actually goes a different direction towards New England, which so he's going a little further north by northeast as opposed to due north where I am.
Right.
The Boston Post Road.
Right. He takes the coastal route, which
Yeah.
is changed because of sea level rise. And yes, and there are, and right, I shortened, the names of the towns are abbreviated in the book by the people who live in them, just because of the change in the way people are thinking. There's that people's names are different in the culture, and the names of their towns are more like neighborhood names. So,
Just a couple more examples.
Well, there's Coes, which is for Cos Cob, and Greenwich is still Greenwich, I guess. No, but then Sherwood is named after the hill and the street. So that has become kind of a sub-neighborhood, but is more like a town or a tribe. Coase, Yale Havens.
Right, that's a good one.
Is New Haven. Is that right? Not New Haven. Yeah, Yale Havens, New Haven. And then a lot of towns get kind of a new. New Jersey has expanded to New Jersey, but also a lot of Pennsylvania and New York, and that's just called the Jersey.
Right.
But that's kind of a throwback to revolutionary times. And then
it's almost like there was a period where people, reinvented their names based on clues that they had or something like that. That like nobody just sat down and decided, well, we called this place New Jersey once, but now we're just going to call it the Jersey. It suggests that there was some sort of enormous catastrophic thing, which almost like rebooted or wiped away the collective memory. And then people kind of had to reinvent their geography,
Yeah, I mean, the premise is definitely that there's been such a level of upheaval by sea level rise, a dramatic level of sea level rise, that has really caused people to rename, rethink, and start completely different cultures and economies, based on the fact that the old way is swept away, literally. And so rather than everyone kind of sinking into a zombie apocalypse, they do what human beings do, which is they adapt and change. And the book is just about the adaptations and the changes that people go through.
You mentioned names, people's names, the lineage aspect, which is our last name here in in this country and in most of the West. We just use our last name as our lineage, to follow our lineage, right? And it's patriarchal,
right?
Typically, although it's changing. In your novel, and I love the explanation of it, you go with the female because, how many people we know, even in our families, you find out, oh, that's
yeah, not really your dad.
Yeah,
not really
or
your dad.
As in I have cousins who discovered that they have siblings. They discovered this in their 50s because of family secrets. I can't get into too much detail without betraying family members.
That sounds like a dangerous place to go on a podcast.
I've gone there a little bit, but I've obscured or left out names. But it's the remarkable thing about, I'll only say this and then we'll return right to the way your characters are named, is that my parents, who were privy to these secrets, which should have never been secret, by the way, because there's an explanation for it all. But my parents, who never kept anything, never said a word to my sister, and I couldn't believe that they kept the secret, especially my mom. But and when I found out about this information, I did not talk to my dad about it. I kept it going because I thought, well, he thought to respect these secrets, and then I still have not discussed it with my sister, for instance. Although, I think this information is sort of becoming more common and now. But when I was with these folks more the last time, I was finding out that okay, but they discovered siblings and all. It's a long story, man. But anyway, that's why in your book they at some point I guess the human race, or at least those in the United States or whatever this land is called, decided to go through the female lineage because there are
fewer errors.
Errors.
If nerds designed,
yeah,
if nerds designed a naming scheme, they would go the one that produced the fewest errors, and the fewest errors come through the matrilineal line because, without exception, at least for now, the mother's always there for the birth, and it's more reliable.
Right.
Not 100% reliable, but it's more reliable, and you can go back, trace so my name would be, I'm going to give away all kinds of things if I do that, but my name would be Jim, Linda, Bonnie, Lynn, Mame, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't go back far enough, but they also go back really far, and then each of those nodes has data that's associated with each of the nodes, so you really get a full sense of who a person is with their name. Also mentioning the fact that this information doesn't tend to be communicated verbally, but is communicated in a form of thought texting, which is sort of like speaking in the data stream. So your people are just sending each other messages via neural implants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, which is something maybe that taps into other fantasy worlds that have been existed, but you really have explored this in great detail. I was going to get to that next, but I first wanted to kind of lay that down the line. The other reason why the matriarchal or the maternal lineage makes sense is because a currency. Men, the reason we are named after men, and men, there's always been a, how would you say it, a financial aspect to whether it's through dowry, whether it's through inheritance, through that may explain the patriarchal.
That's right.
Way why we named. I think that comes up in the book.
Yeah, it's property. It's non-labor.
Property.
Non-labor income. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Whereas that doesn't. Maybe that, but that also changes in the book.
Well, yeah, and this is
the way people.
There are two societies. There's a society that after this big upheaval, that just throws away everything, and that's why I call it a cyber hippie travelogue, because I was trying to think about what other cultures have been willing to just scrap it all and start again, and I was reminded really of the hippie culture, which also became the nerd culture. And from the 60s, there was like the Whole Earth Catalog. There was these kind of a back to the land movement, and it worked and it didn't work. But the idea behind it was far more radical than, say, the era that I grew up in, which was like punk, where punk is like a rebellion. Hippie was not even a rebellion. Hippie was like, scrap it all, let's start something new. And that's very much like the interconnected side of the culture in this book. They reimagine everything, and they do it as nerds. But there's still that sense of total rebellion or total revolution in that mindset that comes more directly from hippie.
It's more of a renaissance than a revolution, in other words. Renaissance.
Yeah, right, a rethinking.
It's a rebirth. Yeah.
A rebirth.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of positive aspects to it. And I wanted it to be something that would freak me out, which it does, and maybe even freak my kids out, but their kids, maybe not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be the mark of good science fiction. It's like your grandkids will find it normal, but you and your kids will probably find it weird
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
and threatening.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it. You said that was one of the societies,
Well,
or
naturally,
one of the cultures in the society.
yeah. And there's another society living side by side that is much more of the traditionalist society, the anti-post-human society. These things exist now. So, I mean, there is a strong religious movement against any notion of post-humanism.
Mm-hmm.
There are videos you can find online about that. So it's just that in the book, those are the two major factions. There are the people who are technophobic, traditionalist, want to bring back the old economy, the
Mm-hmm.
markets, the hierarchy, the way of life, government, and the cyber hippies who are like, no, screw it. We've got a whole new way of doing things. Doesn't involve money, doesn't involve markets, doesn't involve government. It's just, it's new, it's ours. And at every level, they rethink how everything is done. And I actually think that's fairly realistic, because this is kind of what people are able to do that. They're able, when things change drastically, they change fast. And so
Hmm.
imagining for me was of a world where things have changed very drastically, very quickly, and the reaction to that.
Mm-hmm. Your what was I going to say? Well, if I can skip to your hero, Marto, who um, is a real champion of this post-human lifestyle. Even though he's a very warm, affectionate person, he fully embraces this way of life. So he's the ultimate. What did you call cyber
Cyber hippie, I
geek,
guess. Yeah, that's
hippie? And yet, as we find out, and with no spoilers, he's confronted at some point during the story with information that rocks his world, right?
yeah.
So it's an interesting dilemma that he's in, because that he finds himself in, much like
Yes.
the people I was describing earlier in my family,
Right. Yeah. Well,
where
your dad.
information comes to light. But it's ultimately a book about ideologies that conflict. But like anybody can relate to that. We're going through that right now
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean, I
very
know
extreme way.
it's a slow, in some ways, it's not, there are no car chases and there are no gunfights. Well, okay, there's motorcycles and so the minimal guns, minimal car chases. Um, there, there's battles,
Yeah, but
a
most of it,
battle, but it's
you know,
not the main thing.
that's mostly background.
Right.
The foreground, we're really more involved with the foreground of the story.
There's conflict, but I was trying to write a story more about the inner journey of who are you,
Right.
and uh, that and I follow that along with a couple of the characters in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who are you really? What do you believe? What do you stand for? What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that makes it sound very boring, actually.
Well, there's throughout there are entry. The hero Marto is on a journey. He is traveling. He's a travel writer essentially, and you read entries into his journal throughout the story, and there are occasional entries into his journal, but most of it is the book is a story about him meeting different people with different ideas. Um, it's a bit Odyssey. It's a bit like the Odyssey in that regard, I guess you could say. There's a long tradition, obviously, in this type of storytelling. I assume that impacted what you.
Yeah, I'm I'm not I haven't read the Iliad and the Odyssey over and over again, but the readings that I've done have stayed with me forever. I can't shake them. And there is a little of the Iliad here in the conflict, and there's a lot of the Odyssey in Mardo's journey, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Helen's too.
Mm-hmm.
They both have their own paths that are a bit like Odysseus.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's written in English. This is one important difference. And
Did you play with the idea of maybe, though there are science fiction writers that have delved into language, you keep the language pretty contemporary.
I do, yeah. So I thought there's got to be something to tie us back. There are some characters that have kind of a lingo and a slang, but in general, I wanted that to seem unusual. Like just in any place you go, you might run into somebody who's got a patois or a special way of talking. I wanted to keep the rest of the characters talking the way we do now. Mm-hmm. And that also extends into, one of the characters is non-binary. And I'm using today's, pronouns for non-binary people. So I'm not trying to invent anything new around that. So, but I definitely thought about it. There were a couple of books that I had read that were written completely in the language of, the culture of a dystopic future that are really tricky to get through and really exciting. I'm trying to remember the Grimly Walker or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not a very long book, but it's written entirely in kind of a broken English. But that becomes the whole thing, and I didn't want that to become the whole thing.
Right. Sure. Well, it's interesting because and therefore the book feels really possible because of from an environmental standpoint, and other standpoints, the book is not impossible to imagine happening, or something relatively close to it.
It's what's been a little freaky has been, since I've finished it in 2018, a number of new, Gizmodo Twitter tweets have come out that I've been watching, or TED Talks that are the beginnings of the technology that I'm talking about here. So, I guess it's not too surprising.
The implants, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, not
so. You can have implants that don't go in your boobs. There are other types that pin, because it seems like what's the point? I can understand. The breast enlargement only makes sense, but you're talking about. But no, the idea of constantly connecting, we are essentially implanted. We don't have hardware in there, but it's exactly what's going on. Where now an enormous number of people cannot leave their phones away from them or off. They feel the unsatiable need to be connected and online. So really, what's the big difference?
The speed and intensity of it.
Sure, but you know what I'm saying. We're not okay, but that's just the speed and intensity. We're still doing it. It's not.
We're doing
automatic.
It right now, right? Obviously.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
Because
using a social media tool called Zoom.
Yeah.
But you're able to, when you're walking around, when you're staying online on the grid, like your hero Mardo, who is walking, doing travel writing about his experiences walking to the New England. He's people that are follow him and that are part of his network are able to view, to exchange thoughts and ideas. And also there is a version of currency, though that's kind of explored, whether it's a real currency. Some people will say that it isn't. But I think it's an interesting idea you're exploring, because when you get to the bottom of it, nobody is pure and completely benign. There's always a quid pro quo. There's always a quid pro quo. If you like somebody's page, you expect that they're going to like your page, or like what your post rather. And if they don't like your post, you're insulted if you admit it somewhat. I mean, there's this idea that I mean, so that's explored in your book, but on a obviously larger level.
Right. I mean, there is, and I think you discovered pretty quickly, there's just the introduction to that is in the first chapter, the scene where Mardo is sitting in a place called the Leicester Sunshine Inn, which was my entry point to the book. When I thought of the Leicester Sunshine Inn, I immediately had a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there, having done some writing in a virtual environment.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks, I'm hungry, I'd like this sort of thing. And then he interacts with some people virtually. And then a few minutes later, somebody brings him that thing. And that's the economy that the interconnected people have, I guess, invented and embraced, which they view as far more efficient, right? So the thing that you want, if you are worthy of it, someone brings to you. And the gamification is by bringing it to someone of a higher worthiness, their worthiness goes up. Mm-hmm. So everyone is kind of, trying to find their position in the percentile of worthiness or merit, as I'm using, and I spent a lot of time thinking, well, okay, how does that totally play out? Can you really run everything like that? Because it is basically like our system of money, but turned upside down. Right. You do the thing, and doing the thing gives you status, but not a unitary measurement of your worth that you can invest or keep or hoard or be completely free of. It changes the way people think.
Jim Infantino has written a book called The Wakeful Wanderer's Guide to New England and Beyond. As you can tell, I just want to hash out some of the elements of your book, which should give people an idea of just how much thought and work went into it. So, I don't want to give away too much, but it's just about a guy who goes for a walk and all the cool people he meets on the way, and self-discovery, and this conflict between these two communities we discovered, those that are have embraced being part of this network, and then those who are more what we might call Luddite, or who refuse to get. I'm looking for a CD because of that, the Jim's Big Ego CD. I'm looking for it because I imagine, as you're writing a song, your songs and your style of songwriting are known specifically in terms of people notice, I think, at the forefront of it, the lyrics. I mean, not to in any way minimize the music behind it, but the
music is minimal.
Well, you're more known as a unique lyricist, okay? If we were just to be reductive, okay? So I have to imagine you sitting or walking around, going through songwriting maybe in your head. I don't know how you do it. But I want to draw a parallel here,
Yeah, it is. Both of them are empathic processes. So I will overhear something, or I'll think of a phrase, or something will remind me of something that was on a podcast, or some small phrase that somebody said.
Are you saying you listen to my show and written some songs?
Oh yeah, constantly. And then I'll play it in my head for a while. That might suggest a character, and then that character might suggest a situation, and the situation will suggest a narrative for a song. And the relationship to the book and the songs is not that far-fetched. I didn't want to write a book because I didn't think I could, but when I started, I realized it's like writing songs. You're writing. I've been writing these little narratives that last 3 minutes and rhyme, and I just needed to take out the rhyming and extend them, but keep the characters and keep the situation. And then each chapter felt like a song, and then chapter after chapter, eventually the book happened. I didn't plan it out. So it, it just became what it was. And that is the album I'm most proud of. Is Adam's
Oh, is
holding it
it?
free.
Oh, is it really? Is it?
Free
I
with
just sort of.
with an
It's the
asterisk.
one I have a couple, but
Oh
this
yeah,
was.
I love that one.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
a beautiful album actually.
there's on the cover is a picture of because this is going to be audio or is just for YouTube?
Oh, we can do some video. We do a combination, release them separately. It could be for my Patreon, which I don't
Great.
have.
No.
But there you go. Free.
Right. It's a messed up old couch on a lawn on some grass, and the title is free with a little asterisk at the top.
When I was living in Boston in the 80s, a book came out, because I know because I worked in a store that sold books, but called The Big Red Couch. It was a photo essay book. It was like a coffee table book.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was the artist took, or a photographer just took this couch and put it in 40 different situations and took a photo.
I remember this. Yeah.
It was kind of cutting edge at the time, because I think it's been copied since, that idea. So I don't know if you saw I don't know if it's the original, but it's called The Big Red Couch or something like that.
Right.
And he just would put it like he'd be at a party, or maybe he'd be, on a ship or I don't know. But he would just put the couch there and then take a picture of it. It's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm guessing he had a team of people that they were willing to move the couch.
I assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they want to
he just throw it over
what
his shoulder.
they were thinking.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but that couch reminded me a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I just love to make stuff. So if I can, I'm sorry that it took me so long to figure out that I could write. I sort of needed to find that starting point for the book, but also I was being a parent at the time. It was really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So couldn't record any new albums. That really really changed my creative life. And then I guess also this is a reaction to that change of life, was, moving to writing narrative from writing songs kind of saved me, because it reactivated my soul as a creative person who makes things. And now it's exciting, so I'm working on the second book. There's going to be 3, I think, at least, of the Wakeful Wanderer's Guide series. And I'm writing a little bit every day and moving along.
Wow. Pretty impressive.
Is it?
I think so.
I feel like I don't have a choice. I have to do this.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling the frustration. I don't know how I put it off. I can relate though. If somebody makes things, I get that.
You have a few episodes, I think, of this podcast. I haven't counted all of them. It's more than 12, right?
And then smaller than a bread box.
It's less than 2,000 and more than 12.
Well,
episodes.
Yeah, but I struggle with whether it's considered art. I don't think it's artistic. I think there's a creativity to podcasting, because but I don't look at it as an artistic, as artistic. Let's put it.
Well, you have a voice and a style. I don't know how much more there is to it than that. Even in writing or in songwriting, I have a voice and a style, and I define my style for writing books. But my songwriting voice and style evolved over a long period of time.
Right.
Beyond that, of course, then you have to craft the podcast. I don't know that this is your ultimate favorite thing to create, Adam, but you're also a musician. I know this about you. So.
Yeah, and that's gratifying. I feel like even if it's for myself, which is, there was a period of time where I was trying to play music, where I did, but I wrote a bunch of songs myself. But I found, first of all, I was not in a band, so I felt, unless I was in a studio, I didn't feel some sort of motivation to be productive. Just performing wasn't enough, apparently, because I was not prolific. And
just performing by yourself, or
Well, I played with by myself. I would sometimes bring in a band, like musicians that were in the studio that I brought, because I did record a bunch of the songs, but I never really. I mean, I was already too old in my mind. My worst enemy. But I just said, well, I'm too old now to put together a band, and I probably was. I don't know that I could have put a band together, or it would have taken probably a tremendous amount of work to try to find a band and then to keep them, because I was writing the music, I was singing the songs, and you have to find people who were willing to get on board with you to being the guy to do that. You accomplished that, but I don't know if your band had other gigs, did their own albums, or were that's, I'm sure, not.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had many versions of the band.
Yeah, right.
Some of the members have gone on to do their own thing,
Right.
and I just think I'm really lucky to have had them for the period of time that we were able to play together, because, obviously they had their own ideas, they had their own thing they wanted to express.
Exactly.
They were willing to play for a while, at least in my project. And now the band is, they all have their various projects. The drummer is a producer, bass player is really creative guys, played on a bunch of different projects, and works at a kind of a large sound company. And Josh Cantor is the organist at Fenway Park. So
right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he goes out on tour when he's not playing with us. When he's not playing with us, he's
well, right
doing
now
his
we
other
know he's not
things
playing at Fenway, so.
with like members of REM and
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so he's touring all around the world.
Peter Buck, for instance.
I just feel lucky, anytime I get to play with those guys, I just feel lucky.
Yeah. Well, when did you start in earnest? When did Jim's Big Ego, for instance, become a thing?
Oh, okay. 1995. I decided that the folk world was great and I loved it, but I didn't feel really totally at home there, and I wanted to be able to express more. I wanted to be able to get up and scream and yell, and I wanted a lot of noise. I wanted a distorted guitar.
Exactly what Bob Dylan said 25 years before that.
Did he say that? I don't think he said that.
I think he felt that.
Yeah, he maybe. I don't know what he's thinking, man.
Not anymore, but I'm just thinking back then. You can see. Anyway, I think that is the same tension. And I just had, I don't know, Josh Rouse, the singer-songwriter?
Yes.
He's, he does the kind of he has his own thing he does. And I asked him, because I always sense something by, I don't know what it is, maybe interviews or his music or his presentation. But I asked him right at the end of my interview with him, and it was on just a few weeks ago. And I said, have you struggled with the idea of the label singer-songwriter? And he said, yeah, I thought so. Because I just felt like you don't want to be, it's like folk musician. You have to let go of the labels ultimately, right? You do. But everybody goes
have to. Yeah, you have to.
People are going to call you a folk singer. They're going to say, man, you remind me of Joni Mitchell. No matter how many years you've been doing whatever you do, you don't see it at all. But enough people say it. So you just say, yeah, thank you.
It's Joni a little Mitchell, like if you're bald and you shave your head, you look like every other guy who's bald and has ever shaved his head.
Right. I never had to struggle with that.
No,
but it's funny. Yeah, but
really
I never
impressive.
thought of that. Well, surgery.
Surgery. Well, good for surgery. But yeah, singer-songwriter is a hyphenated thing. It means that you're not just a singer, or you're not. I mean, what are the alternatives? You could be the songwriter and never sing. You could be the singer and never write.
Yeah. Well, you kind of skirted it a little bit because you created an entity called Jim's Big Ego.
Right.
And that's all Rouse said he had to do, but he just he never could come up with the right name, and at a certain point you are Josh Rouse, or you are Jim Infantino.
Right.
But you came up with Jim's Big Ego from the get-go, it sounds like. And so, which is it's kind of self-deprecating, it pokes fun at yourself. And so, it's just a perfect name for a band. And obviously caught on, you had a cult following there. I mean,
we are globally obscure. That is,
that's a good thing.
If you go to New Zealand and you're at a party, it's very possible you'll run into 2 Jim's Big Ego fans.
Well, my experience was being in Florida getting ready to go on a cruise. I was staying with family in Boca. And
Boca.
I have younger cousins. They were college age or something like that. And, we were talking about music or something, and they brought up Jim's Big Ego. I said, what? How do you know about that? Oh, yeah, he's great. So I said, pulled out my phone and I called you.
Yeah.
I hadn't talked to you in a long time. So it's like a nice.
Well, and it should be said that we go way back, actually.
You do, I know. Well, you and I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well it's true.
Yeah.
I know that I remember teaching guitar a little bit at camp the summer of '79 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably summer of '79.
But I'd only been playing for 2 years myself, like back then.
But that was it, and I don't think I've learned any other chords. I think that's I stopped.
I don't believe that.
I listened to some of the early things. I'm like, oh, I haven't learned anything new. I only know these things.
Did you ever take guitar lessons, like real guitar lessons?
Somewhat, yeah. I learned a lot from a guy named Jeff Bartley, who's up here in Boston. I know he's out of town now. He's in Massachusetts, and he's a genius. He's a total guitar genius, and it's a little frightening learning from him because you're just never gonna know everything that he knows, and he has. I learned the steady thumb. Like I didn't learn how to do it, but I learned that there was a thing called a steady thumb.
I never heard of that.
I will never have one.
What is that?
In blues, your thumb in your picking hand, the steadiness of the thumb is like the rhythm,
Oh, like a metronome?
Yeah, and it takes a long time to get that right.
Sure. I was just watching, I listen to a lot of new stuff, but I was listening to, just came upon Steve Forbert, remember? Romeo's Tune, remember that guy? He must play at Passim's.
I opened for him, I think, at the Iron Horse.
I saw him at Joe's Pub once, but there's something so soulful about his voice, and again, another guy who you could say he's a folk artist, but I don't really even use that term, except for as it applies to Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and those types of people. But I don't really use folk too much, just for my own. It doesn't really. I'm pretty pure about that term. And there was kind of two types of folk music, and there was the labor songs and that kind of thing, and then there was that revival time in the 50s and 60s. Ian and Sylvia, Pete Seeger, the Weavers, the Kingston Trio, the New City Ramblers, whatever. Right. I don't know, but those were folk singers to me. And then from that, and then also Dave Von Ron, and Woody and Dylan would have fallen into that, except that he departed from that and he became a rock star, and he. I don't apply folk, even though it's used a lot, even by the industry, But anyway, I brought that up for a reason, and now it's because I don't shut up. I can't remember why, but.
Songwriter is a great term. I would never mind ever being called songwriter, because that in a weird way that puts the emphasis on the creation, and I have to be playing for people to write songs. I have to know. I was talking about
Steve Forbert, but he was just. I'll come back to it, but finish your thought, please.
No, I want to talk about me. I don't really give a crap about Steve Forbert.
I was going to come. I know either, but he puts a board on the floor and he keeps beat by with his shoes because he wears hard-heeled shoes. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's like the steady thumb. That's another blues technique. Yeah, I couldn't ever. Oh my goodness, the podcast is ruined. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're talking about this being called a songwriter as opposed to a singer-songwriter or folk artist. Right? That a songwriter really defines. It's an acceptable term,
I just think of the songwriter as where you're creating these things, and and naturally you'll want to perform them. I mean, I'm making an assumption there, but I can't write unless I know someone will hear it eventually. So in some way I'm writing it for the enjoyment of people, There's some generosity involved. Otherwise, I don't get inspired to do it unless I can picture that it might be fun or amusing or depressing or enlightening or something for people, that it might touch their heart in some way. Then there's all that motivation to want to finish or create, something for those people.
Do you think there are songwriters who, it's like a novel, like somebody writing a novel who, you always imagine an audience, don't you? I mean, do you think anybody writes a song without it being for people to listen to?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's out there. But of course, we wouldn't know, right? If somebody's just writing,
Right.
he's in a cabin,
Exactly.
she's in a cabin,
if a
they're in a
tree
cabin,
falls
writing
in
for
the
themselves.
woods.
Yep. And they don't care. They're playing for the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies love it. So maybe, but then it's for the Grizzlies. I don't know. I know that if I can jump back to the book again.
Yeah.
So this is the most exciting thing for me now because it's a brand new thing, right? It's a brand new activity for me. So that's,
yeah, sure.
I naturally just want to talk about it all day. But the book was a different level of inspiration, which I got on a bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the moment I got the inspiration for the book. It got, how do you do this? What happened was the whole thing dropped into my head.
Downloaded.
Yep. Like an implant, like software.
Whatever, right, the God there is, or whatever that is, it downloaded this into your.
And I was Josh, actually, and I were coming back from a gig in New York, and Josh was like, "Are you okay?" Because I was like, "Whoa," And then I spent the rest of the bus ride talking to him about the idea, and then I spent the next 3 to 4 years talking to people about the idea for the book.
Okay.
Because I couldn't stop thinking about it, and
Yeah.
all the details that are in there got worked out, during those conversations. But I became the most annoying person at any party, because that was all I wanted to talk about. And I realized, now
you have to write it.
Nobody's going to write this. You have to write this.
Right.
It doesn't matter that you don't know how to do it. You need to sit down and find the starting point and write it. You
could have made it a screenplay.
Yeah, I don't know how, equally, I didn't know how to do a screenplay. And I don't know if I think in terms of,
cinematic language.
Is that it? Is
Whatever.
that, is the kids are
I'm
calling
just just helping you out. I don't know what you're going to say.
And is it still on film? Do they use film?
No.
Okay. I have actually, as an exercise, mapped out some of this book, into episodes, like sort of fantasy,
I can see that.
kind of.
Sure, right, because it is like the Odyssey.
Yeah. Because a lot happens. I don't know how you'd make it into a 2-hour film.
You don't need to. I think you're right. Maybe it could be done as a series.
It's very possible it could.
Type of thing. Yeah.
There's some hurdles, just because the storytelling takes place. It's very mental, in a weird way.
There's always ways to figure that out. You're not doing it direct. You got to adapt it.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, a lot of the communication is silent, so that's weird. But that could be.
Yeah. There's always ways to figure it. This is the book we're talking about. You can buy it now. Go to your online bookstore that you purchase books from.
It's actually only on Amazon right now. It may be on others soon. But it's only on Amazon right now.
And there's is there a Kindle edition, by the way?
Kindle, and I'm working on the audio.
You are?
And
you are?
I am.
I thought you would ask me to do that because of that voice that you.
I should have.
I can't imagine that would be torture, but I guess I would do it for the right price.
Yes, it is.
A website, for instance.
Maybe. It's hard. I'm learning to do an audiobook.
It's acting.
It is acting, and you have to pacing, and a lot of sitting in a sound booth in utter silence, just with your voice. But I think it had to be me because of my Jim's Big Ego fan base, and I just figured it would be a letdown for them if it wasn't my voice, even if it's a little suckier than the other.
No, I think it's a great, unless you get somebody like Kenneth Branagh on. Or
who? Yeah. Can I get his phone number? Because I was just thinking, actually, that would be
sure.
Thanks.
555. You know, it's funny because a lot of people do ask me from time to. I was just asked last week. This woman is doing a some article or something. She's a writer. She works for this Jewish publication or something. But she's doing something on humor based, and she said so. She wants, like, she saw that I had Barry Sonnenfeld on the show, and you know, she wants to reach Rob Reiner. She just thought, oh, I'm the conduit because I like. People ask me all the time, can I get so-and-so? I don't have their, they're a publicist when I have famous people. Once in a while I will have a thing with them.
Yeah.
You know, like, because they really enjoy themselves or they just connect or whatever. Just to come back to your book.
Yeah.
If we have to. You said that during that period at those parties where, and then of course, now you have to put up or shut up because you don't want to be that guy who is all talk but ultimately never produces. I've done that before. Fortunately, not on a widespread level, but I've had also some real great ideas. Anyway, during that time, did you also feel the need to research whether this had been done before? Because, you know, it's very possible that, right, that could be. I wouldn't know. I'm not so thoroughly knowledgeable of the science fiction genre that I would know that.
Yeah. So yeah, when I was getting ready, over the 5 years that I was thinking or terrified about writing a book, but haunted by the inspiration, I did go through and read a lot of sci-fi that I had not read, and I reread all of Dune, all of those books, and then
The House.
And because Frank Herbert,
The House was. What was it
oh
called?
yeah,
The
House Harkonnen. Oh no,
Harkonnen.
that's his son. I think that's his
Oh,
son.
really?
I did not read
No,
those.
I read 5 Dune books.
No, yeah, right.
Only all by Herbert.
Right, the ones by Herbert. Wow, Dune,
Frank
Children of
Herbert.
Dune, Chapter House Dune, all of those and the ones in between. I went straight through because I felt like that was the closest thing where the world was so complete and everything in it, all the
Amazing.
the economy and the trade
Right.
and
Well, that's what
the
makes
guilds,
him brilliant.
you know.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
opposed to just a good writer.
I felt like that was my first duty, was to make sure that I was being thorough, as thorough at least as I felt like Frank Herbert, or as thorough as I could be to reach that level, without probably ever reaching it. But afterwards, I did read a lot of Cory Doctorow, who I think has written some books that really do deal with some of the things that I'm writing in this.
Thematically?
Thematically and technologically, and also the whole idea of merit. Cory actually takes a position that is hard against it, but within a technological framework. So the economy that I set up of merit in the Wakeful Wanderer's Guide, that is sort of an anathema to a book like Walk Away, where things are much more open, even more hippie, like completely open gifting economy, not tracked, no quid pro quo. And he also explores some of the downsides of that. But yeah, so Walk Away was a great book, a great example of that. And then right when I was finishing my book, that Black Mirror episode came out. It was a famous one. Is it Downfall? The woman is going to a wedding, and there's a social merit program. It's combined with money, which sort of makes it very evil.
Is that the one with Ron Howard's daughter?
I don't know if that was, well, see, this is the film world. See, if I was further in that world, I would know immediately whose daughter was whose.
There's the episode where she's walking around and all of a sudden some transgression, she accidentally transgresses, and her score completely plummets.
Yes, that's totally it. It's
like
brilliant.
Like Mardo did. It happens at one point.
Yep.
Within the context of this community, he transgresses.
And it's a disaster.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it's worse too because it's shaming, right? So all the things that we're talking about on Twitter now, I mean, they really hooked into that. But I had already worked all that out, and I hadn't finished the book yet. And I was like, if only my book was out first before this, TV episode had hit. But I think this is in the zeitgeist a bit. So at some point you have to not worry about whether it's the completely original idea, and just write your version of it. Just write your take, on it. even if Cory Doctorow is going to hate you for the rest of your life.
Did he take it? Did he have a
No,
personal
no.
vendetta?
No,
you
no,
can-
never
do you
met him. He
have-
hasn't read it.
Okay,
Not a thing. Just me being paranoid.
I know.
Yeah.
I think yeah. So we'll talk about the strategy. I mean, I will. I'm only going to be like one early conversation. You should be talking to people that have far more knowledge and experience around strategizing, getting your book, the next one out, and increasing the scale, of the production of it and the publicity of it, et cetera, marketing.
This is
People
very much
should
where
know.
it does hook in with the film world. My concern is, as the creator, I just want to make the best possible thing I can make.
Well, that
And-
should be the first priority, but it doesn't exclude other.
It also doesn't guarantee that people will discover it and enjoy it. And that next step of people discovering and enjoying it, of course, is tremendous with books, because they're literally kind of they're taking the world that you created, downloading it into their heads, and then living in it for a while.
Yeah.
And that was in your head originally. So there's nothing like that. It's 80 times better than writing a song and having people enjoy it. Writing a novel and having people enjoy it is 80 times better. Bet it's a lot like making a film and having people enjoy it, because there's just something about knowing that the thing that you thought of is now being thought in by others.
Or by, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expanded too. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think anything is that, the idea of getting the word out, or sales, or whatever you want, audience size is largely just based on more people learning that it exists. It's kind of a formula that works. I mean, until you're famous for it. That will work for just about anybody, because there's always going to be a certain number of people interested in exactly what you're trying to do or doing, like
yes,
if you're writing a book on this particular subject, there's an audience and it's sizable, the size being larger than the audience that bought the first book, because that was, largely based on your existing following, as well as people that care about you and what you're doing. And then a certain percentage of, people that learned about it, but now you build on that, that's all, and then it just always comes to, that's why publicists is so important, because they are going to increase the size of that audience for you. They're going to learn that these books exist, regardless of reviews, regardless of everything else.
Yeah. And it's impossible for me to really think objectively about the work. So, I'm giving you my interior take on it. And somewhat, that's true. You need an interface with the outside world, in a sense, when you've created something like this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's the same with this podcast. I mean, it's the exact same thing. I would have a much bigger audience if I just hired a publicist.
Right. And if I can hire a publicist for the second book. I mean, also, there are plenty of readers who will not touch a book in a series until the whole series is done. They've learned their lesson from George R.R. Martin. And they're like, never again. You're not roping me in this time. But yeah, I've seen that on some chat boards.
Explain what did you just refer to? I don't know.
Oh, George R.R. Martin?
The only George Martin I know produced the Beatles.
George R.R. Martin. Am I getting the name right? I'm paranoid now. He wrote a book called Game of Thrones. No, Thrones.
Oh, he's the writer of Game of the guy who wrote.
Yeah, so also a multimedia adventure. But originally, before that came out, again, I read through up to what he had finished, which is still, I think, the place that he had finished. And he's promised the next book, So people have been really upset about that, because they love to live in that world. But I don't know why. It's a horrible world. But I loved it too. And
but richness can compensate for a lot. The richness of a story, of a world that is created, even if it's characters are.
It's addictive in a weird way.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Yeah.
It's creating a fantasy world.
And it's like that for writing it too. There's a certain living in it that happens.
Right. At a certain point, does it clicks at a certain point? Is that what happened, do you feel? That's why I was kind of bringing up earlier trying to bring up songwriting, because I remember once I had my melody and my basic rhythm of a song, I could just put the pen down. I could and I could just work
Yes.
on the lyrics and just kind of get it exactly right just by walking around the streets of New York City. I could just get the song exactly where it needs to be, but because I was free. It was going to come. It was all there. It was
Right.
just, I just had to kind of tap it into it, because I had gotten over the hardest part, which is that first part of the process.
That's a great description of it, because that it is. So that's a wonderful feeling. I think in songwriting, it's easier. You're really dealing with something much more finite.
Yeah.
I'm also, when you're writing novels, and I'm checking it with other writers now. I'm talking a lot with other writers, which is really helpful. Is the technique that you use to write the first one or part of the second one may not be the right technique for continuing. Maybe you have to swap out techniques. Originally, I would wait for the complete inspiration for a full chapter before typing anything. And then I would write the whole chapter in like 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
And then I would wait again, and that just stopped working for me. Once COVID hit, especially, my brain was so full of anxiety, just about the state of the world. Inspiration was not coming for the individual chapters. So now it's sit down and write for a specified period of time, once a day, no matter what. Not a long period of time, but once a day. And if you don't know what's going to happen, work it out, keep typing, work it out, rewrite it. And that's what's working right now. With songwriting, it is much more, it kind of plays and plays and plays in your head until it's done, right? Until you've like hammered out all the messed up parts and the bad rhythm and the rhymes that don't work, and you just hammer and hammer until it's done.
Yeah.
But it stays playing until that happens,
Yeah, right.
And that's so immediate, that's a really fun experience.
Very gratifying. It seems in a way almost experience as a reader, because when you're reading a new book by somebody you don't know they're writing, of which you don't know the writer. I don't know. Anyway, you have a new book and it takes a little while to get into the rhythm of it, because they're presenting a new language, potentially a new world, a new type of writing. And so maybe it takes 20 pages, sometimes maybe it takes 100 pages. But once you get it, once you're there and you're on track and you're in that rhythm, it is a joy, because then it's just whenever it ends is too soon, because you're just love being in that. It's probably, you've experienced that, obviously.
I'd like to think if you can make it 4 chapters in, you'll finish the book with mine. But it is not an immediate, it's not an immediate gratification. I don't know if that was your experience, but when you start out.
Yeah, for sure. But then I know from the prior experiences that the payoff is usually better.
There has to be some faith, that you're not being led into just a mess when you start reading and you have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And my favorite example of that is Neil Stephenson's book, Anthem, which I recommend to anyone who enjoys being completely in the dark for as long as possible in a book, but then having the payoff be so great that you wish you could get your memory wiped so you could go back and read it again without knowing what the hell was going on.
Oh, wow.
It's that good.
Yeah.
And I wanted a little of that. I would never be able to write like half a book where you're totally lost, but I wanted a little, just 2, 3, 4 chapters where you really needed to get up to speed, because things were so different. I wasn't relying on you to overlay any of the current reality on what was happening. I wanted it to really be new. So, and it was new. I mean, I wanted to not compromise on any of the strangeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. And it's true. It's exactly right. You have to have kind of a faith that you will eventually click into the track. Because at first you're just getting this language and this information, and it seems arbitrary, and there's nothing harnessing it, or anchoring it rather. And eventually you get there, and then it's like, So you just have to say, okay, I'm getting a certain amount of information. This form is starting to marinate, and then all of a sudden you get
And
the idea.
I explained more than I wanted to originally. Some of my early readers were like, you have to explain. You can't. They're not going to make it, past these 4 pages if you don't explain a little bit.
Right. You edited your book, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Right. Which is, fortunately, those people said what they said, because normally an editor is the one that kind of will have that conversation with you. I have to imagine that's what they're good at.
I was blessed with many early readers.
Yeah.
They gave me great insight into what was happening.
Yeah.
So,
but I appreciate the imperative that you must have been feeling. Like, this has got to get done. I have to kind of climb over every hurdle and get it done. That's the important thing.
Well, yeah, no,
Otherwise,
and I had
it's just going to not happen.
Right, and I had a terrifying realization. I was crossing the street and I hadn't seen a car and it almost hit me. And that was when I was going around to parties telling everybody about my idea for the novel, and I hadn't started writing. And I realized, I've got this wonderful thing in my head, and I could get hit by a car, and get brain damage, or I could die. And then all this will just die. Right. And that's the next day.
And then, my kids.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. They'll be fine. They're young, resilient.
You had to download or upload, I guess. Upload this novel, which you have. And again, it's called The Wakeful Wanderer's Guide to New England and Beyond. Available now on Amazon. I recommend it, man. It was a pleasure to read, and I'm sorry that that a move took place in the middle, because I kind of got very pulled away. But I read the second half like in one reading, essentially.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, I mean, it's
under. I'm sorry, it wasn't longer. Just working on that.
It's an economically written. It's only it's just under 300 pages. So, but you don't have to write a Frank Herbert.
That's right.
Even his books got shorter. It was like each one. I think there were a couple that weren't very long. But Dune was pretty dense. Yeah. But was that one of the great books? Did you read any of his sons' sequels, or?
Yes, and they're good. They're just not the same. It's not his style.
Well, he's a different person.
It's sort of like an imitation of his style, but it's not quite right.
Ersatz Frank Herbert.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah, it's and that's the problem. Of course, Christopher Tolkien too. But of course, right? Because only the author, the original author, could be the original author. And then, of course, it must be hard, right? If you're writing for what your dad did.
Oh yeah, I mean the brevity, is that the right word, or the courage?
Yeah,
is only surpassed by the greed.
Yeah, the vision of the 3 prequels are fantastic. The world is fantastic, of course.
It's been so many years. I guess I get to just look at synopses or kind of condensed, cheat sheets. Like I read those books in high school.
Yeah,
those Dune books. So it's been like 40
It's still
years.
so relevant too. That's what's crazy.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You read them now and you're like, oh, that, right? I mean, Baron Harkonnen, sure, or Raban. Reminds me of somebody. Raban reminds me of somebody, and Fade Routledge reminds me of somebody too. Plus you've got the kind of the whole oil,
ginger-colored. Say again.
What?
Oh right.
Yeah, well, the war for oil, which is sort of the spice and the fuel. But no, am I saying that Donald Trump is?
I don't know, because it's been so long since I've read the books. I can't remember the characters.
Is the beast? Is Raban? I'm not saying that at all, and I'm not saying that Pence is Fade Routledge either.
Okay.
I'm just saying he could probably play him in a upcoming sequel.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think he dies though.
Somebody needs to write that. Great. This has been great. Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. I was super thrilled that you read the book, and then of course really flattered that you wanted to talk about it. And I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I think these are awesome. I listen to them all the time.
It's amazing.
Yeah, there you go.
Because you're not a film, you know, I don't know if do you feel as a result like you need to watch them, or do you feel it's almost beside the point in many cases?
Don't I need to watch all the films? No, I mean, there's way more films now than I could possibly watch in my lifetime that I'd want to see if I were to follow up with every one. But what I love is the discussion of storytelling. Yeah. Storytelling is like, it's how our minds work. It's like an I think your podcast is an exploration of the human brain, the mind, the way it works. We are storytelling people, and these are expert storytellers, and we get to hear about their process, which I think is fantastic for anybody.
Don't let me interrupt your compliments.
For anybody who's creating, I think also for anybody who just loves the process of storytelling.
That's why I like to invite. That's why I like to also. I almost wish I hadn't called it Filmwax, because which started as a film series. So it was sort of like the idea originally was to kind of promote that, but then very quickly I realized, this operates on a whole other. This is actually the primary thing. The film series, if I do that, should promote the podcast. It's like, I'm not even joking. It's like, it became clear that the audience for this, and this, I'm talking about 8 or 9 years ago, was clearly, this was the platform that but even at the film series, it wasn't so much the screening as the conversation afterwards with the filmmakers, or, that I wasn't showing screenings without bringing filmmakers. So the idea was that the engagement with the filmmakers and the people and the audience, that, it would have made sense just to have the conversation in the middle of the room, not on a platform, because it's all about just talking about storytelling. And so I kind of almost wish, that's why I have on musicians and authors, because I feel like it should be something like Storyteller Wax. I don't know.
Well, no, you've got film and wax, and you can make up any kind of bullshit story about what wax means. So
which is exactly what I've done, because people ask me the truth, and I'm sure you heard my explanation, because it's always asked of me every so often on the podcast, and I'll just say, well, wax means thinking and talking about something, but actually that's not even how I discovered or invented it. I just thought, I was thinking, film something. I was walking around,
it's
like I do when we're writing, when we're processing,
rhythm going,
right. And I just thought, what would be a good name that would pop a little bit and sound like something interesting and people would want to tap into? And I just came out, Filmwax. It meant, I had no idea what it meant. It was just arbitrary.
I think those things are great, because then the meaning kind of,
evolves on
builds over time. Without your conscious mind getting in the way. No, it's fine. And also, it's your damn podcast, so just put whatever you want.
That's right. Exactly. Well, it's like Josh came on Rouse, and he said, I was thinking about, film, and, I guess he felt a little pressured almost, like, why, to figure out, because he's written some songs that have been in films. And that would be.
Well, right.
Plenty.
Oh, well, like Mike Viola, right? I mean, some great songs.
Well, he could have made a living just on that. I mean, because of and he had some major films. He was, and Josh is a huge talent, and Mike Viola, I think, might even be less known than Joshua. I don't know, because he's not as big of a touring. He doesn't tour relentlessly.
Is he a songwriter? I mean, for me,
he's a producer. I would think he would consider himself first and foremost a producer, almost. I am, because he's produced so many great people. But Oh,
and I want to say for your listeners, he and my friend Ducky Carlisle were in a group called the Major Labels.
Oh yeah, I have album out. I have it.
You do. I love that album.
It's on a cardboard, like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Isn't it just like on a piece of?
It might have been an insert. They pressed it, like not that many of them. But it's such a great album. It's so good.
It is ear candy. It's and anything that these guys do, I'm interested in. Anything. I just love. I think Mike Viola is. Since you brought him up, I think he's, in the pantheon. he has such an understanding of production and of songwriting craft. It's just amazing. And a singer of his song, and as a singer of his own material, he's just an unbelievable singer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't say enough good things about him. And I love, I appreciate that not every, he hasn't been compromised, but, it's at his own, financial detriment, in the sense that I'm sure he does fine because he's a successful producer as well, but he, let's face it. But when he came on Sony, I'm like, this guy, not gonna last. I just played my on the phone. I put it on the Thoreau. We went to summer camp together, and I've been posting songs on there. Well, I put it on my Facebook too. I played a Michael Penn song.
Oh yeah,
his first and maybe only major hit.
Right,
No
Romeo
Myth.
and Black Jeans.
Yeah, No Myth. Right, it's a song. Right, yeah. I just played that one. But I'm an enormous fan of his stuff too, and he's married to Amy Mann.
Yep. Yeah.
But I thought he was every bit as talented as she was, and she's
and she's incredible. I mean,
incredible.
I'm gonna. Was it I'm with Stupid? I think that's what. Yeah, and that album,
one of her early albums. Yeah.
I could not stop playing that one. I apologize if anybody's listening and they're like, but they have newer albums. It's like, okay, but these stuck in my head, and I'm an old guy now, so that happens.
Well, there's like a Michael Penn album, and that is like that as well, which I just could not stop listening to. It was like one of these flawless, albums from start to finish. And I'm going to find the name of it just so I don't botch it. I think it's Resigned. I think that's the one. I think it's called Resigned. Yeah. I don't know. Any of them are unbelievable. He's another great guy. And Amy Mann too. She's had a couple of others that are. There was the album she did after Magnolia, soundtrack to Magnolia. But her original, that Magnolia soundtrack, she's got like 3 or 4 songs on that are well known. And then they put on, of course, other songs like from, like Supertramp, and I don't, it's just like, but if the album that she did afterwards had a couple of those Save Me and a couple of other songs from that period, and then it's another one that's just unbelievably perfect. Yeah. Just
good.
Great. Yeah.
Good music.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're turned on by now, I'm always interested in being introduced to people. So not to put you on the spot, just in general.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm not hanging out with anybody right now. I'm sort of home, and
no, I don't mean that. I mean listening to stuff.
No, I know. I need to get re-inspired musically. I'd like to hear something new that will knock me away in that same kind of storyteller mode that the songs that we're talking about do. Because it's always good. It's the best thing in the world to have your doors blown open. And that gives you a bunch of new ideas.
Well, when you're performing around and you were playing clubs and venues, and you were probably put on before or after any number of people over the years, or touring with or doing a festival, and you must occasionally get blown away by somebody. All of a sudden there's Ben Folds or somebody like just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, then there's also these moments we don't have right now, where it's like hanging around the living room with a bottle of wine, listening to.
Yeah.
Right. And I've never heard it before. And oh my God. How many albums have I heard that way that opened a whole new world? And right now it's just not really happening like that. The online thing, how much Zoom can we take? It starts to get exhausting. Not this, of course.
No, I know you.
This I could do all day.
The home concerts or the live.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. Well, being at this new place, I've just been, pulling out all my music. In fact, from my years in this music industry, I just have an enormous amount of music, which as much as I try to weed through it over and over and over, I still have way too many. And I have a cousin who's going to bring up another whole tub of stuff I had at my aunt's house. But, you know, there might be a couple of big Jim Big Egos in there too. Because,
Oh, cool.
I have
If there's anything you don't have, I'll send you.
Oh
Happy
yeah,
to send
no,
you.
I don't have a. Please, I think I only have 2 or 3.
Oh, okay.
So I definitely there's definitely 2 or 3 I don't have. How many albums have you finished?
You have 7. There are 7 you're missing.
Wow. Oh yeah, so I
So-
don't have the majority of them.
Yeah.
I know I have this one, and then there's one with a dog on it.
Yeah, there's a dog. Yeah, that's the last one we were able to get in the studio and do before
Okay.
I had kids.
So I'm
But
missing
we'll
the
go back.
majority then.
Yeah, Stay is the last one. You probably don't have They're Everywhere, No Place Like Nowhere, Don't Get Smart, More Songs About Me. Those are the Jim's Big Ego ones, and then there's some solo ones before that.
Well, as we, in coming in and out of this segment, at least the audio podcast version, we'll be playing some of the music as well. So
Oh, great.
people can, you can let me know which ones you think might work best for that. But
Cool.
people can find your music just about anywhere people stream music, I assume.
Yep, I should tell you I have 3 websites if you're going to put that up.
Yeah, let's just go through all the way people find your.
So
you're
there's
also a web designer, by the way.
right. So that's why I have 3 websites, because I can't decide on one.
No, you should. I think you should split them up. I think that's the wise way to go.
So there's me, the songwriter, author, mostly, not the meditation instructor, but songwriter, author, is jiminfantino.com, easy. Infantino is spelled like it sounds, Infantino. And then bigego.com is for Jim's Big Ego. And Wakeful Wanderer, wakefulwanderer.com.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Okay, I didn't know that was a website.
Oh, it is, and you're on it because I asked people who read the book to send me a picture of them reading the book. And
I was wondering what you
that
did
site.
with that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. And now you have a link you can put on there with, or you will shortly with the.
That's right, to this interview, which I'll post on.
I don't know if you do that, but.
I'll post on all of them.
Nice. Yeah, I want then maybe we can get like Dar on the show eventually.
She's an author. She's an author-songwriter. So you're moving into the literary world. I don't know that she's a filmmaker. She may be.
Well, as we already said, I have a bunch of my favorite musicians have been coming on. I also had another guy I like a lot. He's all about vibe though. He's really very different. Is this guy who's also collaborated with REM, or at least Peter Buck.
Oh, right.
Joseph Arthur, who.
Oh yeah.
Who I love, and I know him a bit through the podcasting, and he has his own podcast, which I think you would love, by the way. He's a bit, I don't know, it's interesting. I'd be curious to know what you think of his podcast. It's called Come to Where I'm From. It's the name of his podcast. And
you mentioned it. You mentioned it, and
okay.
I think I loaded it up, but I haven't listened to it yet because I was really going on like a Filmwax tear for a while.
Thank you. So we will, and then we'll do this again, maybe specifically over some films. We can do that.
My goal is to get the returns next to my name in the listing on your website.
Oh,
do you know
right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sure.
Jim Infantino returns.
Returns.
That is what I'm aspiring to. So.
But what do you do after they've been on several times?
Do you just keep returns? That's up to you. I don't know.
I don't always do it. But the returns, yeah, that's a little. It's just almost like I don't know. It's a sad way of trying to suggest my show's so popular, people are wanting to come back on.
Aren't they?
Their returns.
They do.
Another thing I do is Filmwax Radio Friend, or Filmwax Friend, which is somebody who's been on more than once. So because then they become part of it. Coming on once can be arbitrary almost. Not in this case, but one time can be just they're going through the motions. But if they come back a second time, that usually means that, they didn't have an unpleasant experience.
They're chummy at that point. Yeah.
Right. Filmwax chums. And there's a few people that have been on a lot. I like that a lot.
Well, I like that. Actually, it's actually really cool. If you listen to a great podcast, I was actually thinking of a Chris Hayes one that had referenced an earlier conversation with the same person. Of course, I'd like this particular one so much, I want to then seek out the one before.
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes some of those conversations are just sort of so groundbreaking that you want to kind of know more about that person, that guest that came in. So I
Right.
think the returns is good because then you know that you can go back in the list and
Right.
find the earlier talk.
Well, I wish I had a better way of getting the YouTube channel out there because I think I also mentioned that when I have on somebody multiple times, I can create a playlist. So I have these playlists on the Filmwax Radio YouTube channel, and the playlist I put all of the segments. I just I isolate rather the segment itself. I don't have any intros, no other interstitial music, nothing. It's just the conversation edited, but it's just the conversation. And so if like somebody's on 4 or 5 times, I'll create a playlist of all of the segments and call it, Jim Infantino on Filmwax Radio, and it's packaged together. So you could actually go on YouTube, play it, and listen to sometimes hours of conversation with one person over a span of many years on multiple projects or whatever they're doing, So that's one other nice benefit of doing something like this for years is that I have people now on with their 3rd, 4th films. Some people are especially prolific.
Well, can I foreshadow our my possible returns?
It's pretty guaranteed.
I suggested 2 movies to Adam that he hadn't seen, and he actually hadn't seen them, and he suggested 2 to me, which he could have just done at random, and I wouldn't have seen them. But yeah, so we have 4 films to discuss,
mm-hmm.
2 of which each of us have not seen. There's grammar implied in what I said, but it's not actually there.
Well, I already discussed the Kundun.
Yes.
With somebody else.
Oh, you did. So we need to find you another one.
No, I'm kidding.
That's going to be hard.
I'm just joking.
Oh, thank God. You had me.
No, there's lots I haven't seen, but that you haven't. Oh no, that you have and I haven't. Yeah, that
possibly.
But it doesn't have to be something I've never seen. It could be just something I just haven't seen in many years because trust me, I don't retain it. Usually, I try to go back to a lot of movies over and over the years, so I can discuss them articulately.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how the next the foreshadowing returns works out.
This was great fun though. I enjoyed it.
I did too. I could do this all day.
So
it would be
a
bad idea.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch in the next few minutes, I guess. hopefully
right, Adam.
Hopefully the audio came out.
We'll have to do it again. We can just do the exact same thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay? I've got it down. I marked it.
Alrighty.
All right. See ya.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.